Hello, everybody. My name is Darwin Argueta, and I am enrolled in Rachel Hudspeth's lab on Tuesdays from 1 to 3:45 p.m. This is my species presentation, and the organism that I chose to be my species is Globigerina bulloides. And I'll show you what that organism looks like in 1 second. Okay. This will be the picture of the organism. It is a type of protist that falls under the phylum Forums, and this organism is microscopic. So this is a microscopic image. As you could tell, this organism is spherical in shape, and you could also see these other spherical, circles or balls coming off of it. And actually, what those are its daughter cells that are about to bud off, but we'll talk about that in 1 second. Another observation you can make is all these little like needle-like looking structures that are coming out of these spheres. So that is actually the organism's thread-like pseudopodia that it uses to move, capture its prey. By the way, this animal is this protist is actually heterotrophic, so it does use this thread like pseudopodia to eat its food or its prey via phagocytosis. And just to elaborate more on this shell, the shell here, it's actually called a test, and it's made out of calcium carbonate. So, fun fact right there. And this organism, it could live in a variety of places. More specifically, it lives in the oceans. It lives in the benthic zones of the oceans. So these organisms are ocean floor dwellers. So they have the flexibility to live in different types of salinities and water pressure. So they're mostly found all over the world where there is the oceans and the seas, but there's a higher concentration of them right over here in the 40 degrees north latitude and to the 70 degrees north latitude. So they're mostly found within this area right around here. This is where the major concentration of them will be. And of course, that is not including the land masks, because as I said before, they do live in the bottoms of the oceans. Well, of course, too, they do live on top. Some of them do live at where sunlight reaches the oceans, but the vast majority do live on the bottom of the ocean floor. So as you can tell, they do live, slightly above the tropics, which is located here, tropic zone, and reaching the polar zones, the polar ice caps. So they do live in waters that range from about, like, I would say 0 degrees Celsius, which is freezing, to about 22 degrees Celsius. So they do live in fairly cold waters. Okay. And the Linnaean system classification for this organism, it belongs to the domain Eukarya. It belongs to the kingdom Protista. The phylum, as mentioned before, Foramnifera, or Forums for short. The class, this is where it gets a little tricky to start pronouncing all these words, so bear with me. The class would be Globigerina. The order will be Globigerina. Family would be Globigerinacea. The genus, as I mentioned, within the species is Globigerina. Species, which is just a genus with a specific epithet, is Globigerina bulloides. Okay, and time to show you the phylogenetic tree and show you how this organism is related to other organisms and how is it different and where it would fall under. Okay, here we go. So this would be a familiar phylogenetic tree that we should all be familiar with. It is the protist phylogenetic tree with the 4 different supergroups that it holds. At the very top, we have the excavata clade. At the bottom, we have the SAR clade. Below that one, we would have the Archaeplastida clade. And at the very bottom, we have the uniconta. So this organism would fall under the SAR clade, under the rosarian, and within that one right there, we would go to the forums, as I mentioned before several times. So I wanted to show you this picture first because it does get very specific after this, and I want to show you a zoomed out version of where this organism would fall into before I go into the zoomed in version. That way we could all make those connections. And so this would be the more specific phylogenetic tree of this species. Conveniently, it is going to be found at the very top, Globigerina bulloides, and everything below it will be the everything here below is going to be the other organisms that, of course, fall under the phylum forums and how they relate to each other. So here, the most related species will be this one right here. Everything else, will be similar, but there's slightly differences. Okay, and last but not least, we're going to look at this species reproductive cycle. Okay, here we go. So this species actually reproduces both sexually and asexually. Here is the diagram, and so during the asexual reproduction, actually when it's in the asexual reproduction generation, it is known as the gametes generation, and the sexual generation is known as the agamete generation. These processes are both similar. The only difference is going to be the outcomes. In sexual reproduction, once the organism has reached maturity, the cytoplasm withdraws back inside its test or shell, if you may want to call it. Once inside, it undergoes meiosis, where it produces haploid daughter cells that are then secreted outside the organism, where they later fertilize. They become a zygote with a different haploid cell from a different organism of the same species. Then they make the new organism. In asexual reproduction, the process is almost similar. The cytoplasm still withdraws back inside the test, and once inside, it produces the daughter cells via mitosis, and once they reach a certain amount of size, they start to actually, similar to budding, where they start to bud off the parent cell. As we saw in the picture in the beginning, we saw those 2 small spherical balls that were coming out of the giant ball. That would be the parent cell. The 2 small circular balls were the daughter cells. So that was an example of asexual reproduction, where it produces identical daughter cells. And that is the end of the requirements. But one small thing I wanted to share with you guys really quickly, something really interesting I found. So the shell that this organism has is actually made of calcium carbonate, which forms the remains of the fossils at the bottom of the sea floor where they actually live, and they form these limestone and mineral deposits there. And what scientists can use with that is they're able to predict the different types of temperatures that once existed in this earth at different points of time. So based on the location and uh, those layers that they form, they could be able to make this prediction, which could give them some really good insight on what types of organisms may have lived there that are similar to the ones we already have. And it just goes back to the very beginning where we see how different organisms are related to other organisms and they derive on those traits and become different. That was just one thing that was really pretty cool that I found that I wanted to share. Thanks for watching.